In 1972, a 52-year-old babysitter named Lily Gray was traveling along a California freeway with her 13-year-old passenger Richard Grimshaw when the 1972 Ford Pinto they were traveling in was hit from behind by another vehicle. The Pinto exploded, engulfing Mrs. Gray and young Grimshaw in a ball of flames. The resulting lawsuit, Grimshaw versus Ford Motor Company, was one of the largest ever corporate liability cases, and it wasn't because Ford was selling exploding cars. I mean, don't get me wrong, that is a huge problem. But the bigger issue, if you can believe it, was that during trial, it came to light that Ford had calculated the cost of human life using a mathematical formula. And that is a problem, not just because it's a problem, but also because I don't think it ever really stopped. I'm Jake the Lawyer, and welcome back to Internet Esquire. During the 1960s, a lot was changing about the American automobile. With road deaths skyrocketing as well as emissions, in the 1960s, people wanted something to be done. So, in 1970, the government created the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration out of the Department of Transportation. The job of the NHTSA was to write and enforce federal motor vehicle safety standards and emissions standards. But in addition to this, the actual market for the American automobile was also changing. With the introduction of Japanese cars into American markets, American manufacturers began to feel the pressure to design something smaller, more fuel efficient, and affordable. So realizing that they were losing market share to foreign imports, and looking to design something that could meet NHTSA standards, Ford developed the Pinto, the little carefree car.
Pinto, the little carefree car. A little better idea from Ford.
The Pinto was Ford's attempt to win back the market with a truly American-made subcompact car. And their economic strategy was very simple. Make the Pinto the cheapest car available in its class and just sell more of them. So to make all of this work, Ford had to do something unheard of. They had to put the Pinto on a 2-year development timeline, when what was typical in those days was a 3.5 to 4-year development timeline. To meet this unprecedented short timeline, Ford used lightweight materials as well as designs and parts from existing Ford models in order to avoid the expensive retooling and redesign costs that are typically associated with new development. And this all sounds pretty good, right? Right? Well, one core feature of the Pinto was a rear-mounted fuel tank located between the rear axle and the bumper, designed to maximize trunk space and minimize cost. While this was considered a standard design in smaller cars prior to the Pinto, with the Pinto's introduction of lightweight and cheaper materials, it made that particular position of a gas tank problematic. During crash testing, the Pinto design showed several rear gas tank vulnerabilities, even at low speeds of 25 and 30 miles an hour. Gas tank punctures by bolts, differential edges, and even the gas tank's neck were all possible during these times of impact. This would cause fuel spillage during an accident. And any time you get fuel spilling out of a gas tank, well, pieces of metal are scraping against each other and across the ground during an accident, well, you get sparks. Here's your chemistry class for the day, kids. Fuel and sparks typically make explosions. Seeing this from the crash test results, Ford did make some attempted design changes, unfortunately under pressure from the 2-year development timeline and with a general desire of the engineers to avoid any unproven solutions. They stuck with the rear placement of the gas tank because that's what they knew. Ford Pintos began rolling off the production lines, so many in fact that during the 10-year run where Ford made the Pinto, they produced over 3 million. And Ford's marketing team, ecstatic about the new car to compete with those pesky Japanese imports, began selling the vehicle. Simplistic, carefree design, under $2,000 and under 2,000 pounds. Does more than any import can. Little, lightweight frame, and an almost cosmetic rear bumper just 9 inches from the gas tank. In some models. Void where prohibited. Well, with the Pinto now out in the real world, as you might expect, by 1973, reports of the Pinto exploding in a fiery ball of death began rolling into Ford's recall office. So in an effort to further investigate the problem and submit evidence to the NHTSA, Ford's Environmental and Safety Engineering Division went to work, creating a cost-benefit analysis entitled Fatalities Associated with Crash-Induced Fuel Leakage and Fires. This would later become known as the infamous Pinto Memo. Now, because the NHTSA accepted a cost-benefit analysis as one form of evaluating a car's safety designs, Ford went just full bore into that analysis and into that logic. I mean, just full hog. Now, in this cost-benefit analysis, Ford stated, and I quote, "The actual number of fuel leakage incidents is relatively evenly distributed into 4 basic crash types: frontal, side, rear, and rollover. However, the likelihood of a given crash resulting in fuel spillage is much higher for rear impacts, 26% with spillage, than for other crash types such as frontals, 3.5% with spillage." The Pinto Memo then gives a financial analysis comparing the cost of repairs, which was estimated, are you ready for this? At $11 per car. So here's what they did. They estimated that they had 12.5 million vehicles that needed this specific fix in order to solve the fuel spillage issue. Now they multiplied that by $11 per vehicle to give them a total estimated cost of $137 million. Okay, so great, it's gonna cost $137 million to fix. I'm glad we know how much it costs, and I'm glad we know what the fix is. They just went out and applied it to all the vehicles, right? Right? No, they didn't. Instead, Ford estimated that this fix would save an estimated 180 lives, which would have an estimated settlement value of $200,000 per death, and also that these accidents would cause another 180 severe injuries, and that those would also have an estimated out-of-court settlement. They estimated that this approach would only cost about $50 million instead of that pesky $137 million over there. Quote, "The cost of implementing the rollover portion of the amended standard has been calculated to be almost 3 times the expected benefit, even using favorable benefit assumptions. The yearly benefits of compliance were estimated at just under $50 million, with an associated customer cost of $137 million. So in essence, what this means and what they told the NHTSA was, hey look guys, we can either fix this problem and pass the cost on to the consumer for an estimated $137 million, or we can just not deal with it and pass the cost on to the consumer as well, and it'll only be about $50 million. So what do you guys want to do? We're really saving society money, right? Society, you people.
What do you mean, you people?
Now look, this would be great if they were talking about cookies or a pair of jeans that fit just right, but no, they were talking about their justification for their safety standards and their design in the form of human life. Imagine it this way. You're running a company that produces 1 million shirts per year. In economic terms, we call this the total number of units. Now, of course, if you're producing this many shirts, it's a known factor that some of them will be failures. So what do? Well, first you have to figure out how many of your total units are in fact failures. Let's say it's 1%. That 1% is known as your rate of failure, and it comes with a cost. You see, the people who purchased your shirts that were failures are gonna want their money back or some kind of exchange of value because they purchased something that didn't work. Generally, that makes sense, right? Well, whatever you're doing to make up for that failure is known as your failure cost. And as a general rule, you're going to do whatever is cheapest in order to make up for that failure. So you take the total number of units, A, multiplied by the rate of failure, B, multiplied by the failure cost, C, and this gives you X. Now, if someone came along and said that they could solve all of your defect problems when you produce those 1 million t-shirts per year, you would probably only buy that solution if it cost less than X. Otherwise, it would be cheaper to just continue doing business as is and to take the loss on the 10,000 shirts because that costs less than implementing all this new infrastructure or whatever the solution is to fix it. But imagine now, instead of producing t-shirts, you're producing automobiles that have exploding gas tanks. Instead of just doing the math and making the $11 fix per vehicle, Ford viewed that cost as significantly higher than just doing nothing and paying to settle lawsuits. Ford literally applied the Fight Club equation. You can't make it up.
On a long enough timeline, the survival rate for everyone drops to 0.
Wait, for the purpose of copyrighted fair use, I'll be doing the voiceover of Edward Norton. On a long enough timeline, the survival rate for everyone drops to 0. I was a recall coordinator. My job was to apply the formula. A new car built by my company leaves somewhere traveling 60 miles per hour. The rear differential locks up. The car crashes and burns with everyone trapped inside. Now, should we initiate a recall? Take the number of vehicles in the field, A, multiplied by the probable rate of failure, B, then multiply the result by the average out-of-court settlement, C. A times B times C equals X. If X is less than the cost of a recall, we don't do one. Now this is the corporate greed equation. Now, of course, when this was found out about in Grimshaw versus Ford Motor Company, there was widespread public outcry.
Ford management deliberately chose profit over human life.
Corporate callousness at the highest levels of the Ford Motor Company.
The impact drives the gasoline tank forward into the differential, causing a rupture, spilling gas. Any spark and the tank explodes.
So now the testimony begins.
And this was good, because it established the precedent that now corporations, not just people, but corporations, could be liable for punitive damages in corporate liability cases if they did something that was harmful to public safety and they knew about it. Punitive damages are the law's way of punishing a bad actor when their conduct goes from negligence to recklessness. Negligence is the idea that they should have known about it, but for some reason didn't. This typically comes with a sort of, hey, you should have known about it, everybody else in your situation would have known about it, now you know about it, here's the slap on the wrist, don't do it again. Recklessness, on the other hand, is the idea that you did know about it and you chose to go forward with the risk anyways, without regard to what actually happened or who it harmed. This is where punitive damages come in. If it's found out that you went about something recklessly and then that recklessness actually hurt somebody, you can be liable for punitive damages. You are being punished. Punitive. Overall, this was a good thing for society because it forced corporations to make more humane decisions rather than just looking at everything in black and white financials. But here's where it gets weird. Once corporations figured out that, hey, guys, we could also be liable for punitive damages if we go about our business recklessly and without regard to public safety. So what do? Did they actually fix the problem? No, they actively began to deal with the problem, not by fixing real issues that bring about corporate liability, but by attempting to form public perception around a known issue through media and PR.
So if you're ready to get your life back, talk to your doctor about a couple of beers. What's the big deal? Calm down, God.
Enter Liebeck versus McDonald's restaurants. That's right, the famous McDonald's hot coffee case. Now, most everybody is caught up to what really happened in that case, but if not, here are a few key details. First of all, it wasn't some lady who didn't know coffee was hot, spilt it on herself, and then won $1 million. In 1992, 20 years after Mrs. Gray's Pinto exploded on a California freeway, a 79-year-old Albuquerque woman pulled into a McDonald's drive-thru and ordered a hot coffee. She was then parked in the parking lot, and she placed the coffee between her legs and went to remove the lid. In the process, she spilled nearly boiling hot coffee all over her thighs, legs, and groin, and suffered third-degree burns on over 6% of her body and lesser burns on over 16%. After 8 days of hospitalization for skin grafting surgery, she lost 20% of her body weight and got down to something like 80 pounds. Now this woman, Stella Liebeck, was then also partially disabled for an additional 2 years. Well, this isn't the exact same thing as producing cars that explode on impact. A very similar set of questions came before the court. During the trial, it was found out that for a course of 10 years, McDonald's had received over 700 issues of people being burned by their hot coffee. Now, some of these had settled and others had not, but the main point was they knew about the practice and they chose not to do anything about it. In fact, during the trial, the head of McDonald's quality control was put on the stand and he admitted that they knew about the problem and all the issues over all the years, but they chose not to do anything about it because it was insufficient to cause the company to evaluate their practices. So I did the math. How hot was the coffee in the first place? The McDonald's where Stella Liebeck burned herself is still there today in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and it sits at 5,300 feet above sea level. And at that altitude, the boiling point of water isn't 212 degrees, it's 202 degrees. And during the trial, McDonald's admitted that they kept their coffee at that location between 180 and 190 degrees. At 190 degrees, liquid coffee, which is on the brink of vaporizing because it's about to boil, can cause third-degree burns if it contacts your skin for anywhere between 2 and 5 seconds. The only way to heal third-degree burns is through skin grafting. And this is exactly what happened in the case of Liebeck. So when Mrs. Liebeck went to settle with McDonald's for the cost of her medical bills, humbly asking for $20,000, what did they do? Well, of course they refused, and the case made its way all the way up the judicial system, eventually awarding Liebeck $500,000 in punitive damages directly from McDonald's. Well, actually, the initial jury awarded her $2.7 million. They thought this was fitting because it was the amount of money that McDonald's made in 2 days of coffee sales, but eventually, the matter was settled out of court for around $500,000. Now granted, being burned by coffee is not exactly the same as dying in a fiery ball of death during a Ford Pinto explosion, but legally, the corporate liability between the case of McDonald's and Ford is exactly the same. They knew about the practice, they knew it was injuring people, and under a cold cost-benefit analysis, without taking human life into consideration other than as a cost that can be put into a formula, they recklessly chose to not do anything about the actual problem because they thought it would be cheaper to not do anything about it. But when you think about it, the McDonald's case is in some ways more egregious than the Ford case because all they had to do to avoid the problem was lower the temperature that they served the coffee at. So this time, when people found out about it, the public exploded, but not with outrage, with mockery.
Ooh, my coffee was too hot! It's coffee! Spill a cup of coffee, make $1 million.
How did this happen? Following cases like Grimshaw versus Ford, corporations began to get more sophisticated. They began creating political front groups like Citizens Against Lawsuit Abuse and the American Tort Reform Association. Groups who literally on their website claim to be, and I quote, nonpartisan grassroots movements working to end rampant lawsuit abuse across the United States. Advocate for common sense legal reform measures by educating the public about the devastating real-world costs of lawsuit abuse on working families and small businesses. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been had.
FBI, open up!
In reality, organizations like the Citizens Against Lawsuit Abuse and the American Tort Reform Association are funded by major corporations in the tobacco, insurance, pharmaceuticals, energy, and chemical industries. A few giants come to mind: Philip Morris, ExxonMobil, Dow Chemical, General Electric, Aetna, Geico, Nationwide. Looking at that list, I can't seem to see anyone who would need to pay punitive damages in corporate liability cases involving known hazards to public health. Nope. Looks fine to me.
Nothing to see here!
Anyway, the point is that through major PR efforts at the highest levels of corporate America, within the industries most likely to have to pay corporate liability cases, corporations began fighting back. Following the Liebeck case, McDonald's hired these types of national PR firms to feed simple talking points into local and national news outlets, all repeating the same basic "somebody didn't know coffee was hot and sued us" narrative. This was all done in an effort to limit punitive damages and discourage consumer lawsuits as a whole. As a result, their efforts turned a frail 80-year-old woman who needed skin grafting into an opportunistic public villain. And it painted McDonald's as the reasonable mom and pop, just a friendly, successful neighborhood American that is shamefully being taken advantage of. Who doesn't love a McDonald's burger? We're just over here flipping burgers trying to make a living. You see, it wasn't until 2011 where the actual narrative around the McDonald's hot coffee case began to change, and I gotta be honest, even that has me a little nervous. In researching this video, I found 2 separate videos, one from PBS and one from the New York Times, using the exact same script, only this time to reverse the narrative. Well, sure, this time the machine appears to be saying how McDonald's was actually the bad guy and we should set the record straight. This type of media behavior happens constantly. Generally unresearched simple log lines get created at the global corporate PR level and then are trickled down into local and national news outlets to be repeated over and over again until we get the same cultural narrative widespread. You don't believe me? Oh. Well, if you subscribe to this channel, you probably do believe me, but just in case you don't, Here are a few examples.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But we are concerned about trouble and trending irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
No one is safe.
No one is safe.
No one is safe.
The beginning, not the end.
The beginning of the end.
The walls are closing in.
The wall's closing in.
The wall's closing in.
Bombshell.
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 This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous
To our democracy.
That's real. That's not AI. Look, at the end of the day, I'm glad that Ford and McDonald's were punished for the corporate greed equation. They should have been. But as a result, corporate lobbying and PR efforts appear to have only gotten stronger. As citizens, we need to be on guard for the types of corporate behavior that would rather punish individuals harmed by widespread public hazards rather than help them. In my opinion, and this is my opinion, the best way to do that is in how you spend your money. Sure, it might be cheaper to just order that product from Amazon, or you can get it cheaper when it's made in China rather than when it's made in the USA. But think about this. Small businesses still employ about half of the American workforce. Now that doesn't mean that you need to buy everything from small businesses. And sure, corporations, to their credit, do create things at a cost and a scale that is otherwise unachievable. But in the process of spending money, here's what I like to think about. If half of the American workforce is employed by small business, then any point I can give my money to an American who's employed by a small business, then overall, I'm strengthening a diverse workforce across a broad economy. Giving money directly to somebody that's in your community or your home or your region helps strengthen individual positions in that community, place, or region. And in fact, it's that diversity and that strength that is the lifeblood of the American economy and gave rise to companies like McDonald's in the first place. I highly doubt that McDonald's would exist in the form it's in today if at the time they were developing, another corporation that is their size today already existed. If you're concerned about this type of thing, the best thing you can do is spend your money wisely and locally if you can. It's one of the things that makes America such a diverse and pretty nice place to live. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox as I give my views and my time to YouTube, which is owned by Google. Small business. That's it for today. Thank you guys for watching, and thank you so much if you're new to this channel. I mean, I'm new to this channel. We're all new to this channel. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for such a warm reception to what this channel is and the stories and the legal histories that I'm trying to tell here. I'm incredibly appreciative of it. It's succeeded so far beyond my wildest dreams. I could have never imagined it to be where it's at in just a few short weeks. So I just want to say thank you. And if you do enjoy these videos, definitely consider subscribing. Also, thank you for letting me know in the comments below all the different ideas. I've gotten so many from them, and I cannot wait to go through them and to just dig into them and continue to present them. So until then, have a wonderful day, and I will see you next week.